evening. Your host Monique Tuzon back for the weekly digest of the major events and newsmakers from mid last week to today. And we begin with Mother Nature unleashing her wrath here at home and abroad, bringing misery and madness to the daily grind and pause to our best made plans. Hurricane Idalia just lashed the western part of the Sunshine State when her Category 3 and howling winds barreled through the coastal communities and cities lying in her path, toppling trees, ripping power poles from their foundations, turning roads into rivers, plunging hundreds of thousands of households in darkness, and leaving a trail of destruction initially estimated at $9 billion. Here in our neck of the woods, another hurricane or typhoon hit the northern part of Luzon and in confluence with the southwest monsoon states, drenched and soaked the Ilocos, Cordilleras, Cagayan Valley, even parts of western Visayas and the Mimaropa, snarling traffic on roads that went underwater or buried by landslides, shutting down flights and shipping operations, and just like today, suspending classes due to sustained precipitation. But just as she, Goring, left for good, we in the business of broadcast news and governance are bereaved and bereft of two untimely demises of an iconic TV and radio newscaster and a courageous and dedicated public servant. Veteran radio and news anchor Mike Enriquez and first ever migrant worker department chief Susan Toots Ople lost their battles with serious ailments, putting all on notice that life on God's green earth is not for keeps and at any moment can be one's appointment with final destiny. As such, we are given time to soak up the simple pleasures and joys, just like fun and games and sporting events. And none bigger than last weekend's spectacle here at home than the highest level of hoops competition that kicked off with a bang at the Filipino arena, where tens of thousands of basketball crazy Filipino fans trekked to lay eyes on the best hoopsters on the planet, to include the home team that lost by a close margin. Even the president, who called the day off for all in the mega city, went to see the debut of the 2023 FIBA World Cup last Friday. But while our President Ferdinand R. Marcos Jr. was swamped with work, another former and wannabe president in the land of the free and home of the brave was also swamped with court cases on criminal charges, the latest of which is a set of felony charges on racketeering and conspiracy to the overturn of the legitimate results of the 2020 U.S. presidential elections, along with 18 others. President Donald Trump is the first ever U.S. president to be booked and mugshot on criminal charges, but has somehow managed to cash in on this notoriety through merchandise and campaign fund raising that has churned out $7 million thus far from his base of MAGA diehard supporters. His chief political rival, U.S. President Joe Biden, though the prohibitive favorite to win the Democrat Party nomination for the 2024 presidential polls, has been under greater scrutiny on his ability to lead as a result of his age. Biden paid a visit last week to Lahaina in Maui Island to view the extent of the wildfire damage and commiserate with many residents who lost everything, to include 3 Filipino elderly folk whose remains were found and identified, namely Alfredo Galinato, Rodolfo Roconan, and Salvador Coloma. Their fiery ending to their lives has at least been given closure by the discovery of their remains in the ashes. So unlike the death of one-time Putin ally and revered founder of the Wagner mercenary group, his fall from grace was sealed when he challenged Putin and his generals on how the Ukraine war should be waged and his foiled march to Moscow. Still, the big question remains: was his death on the plane that fell from the sky an accident or made to look like one? Meanwhile, the China-Japan feud is heating up. Besides being on the opposite sides of the militarization issue in the West Philippine Sea, China ramped up the rift with its latest ban on Japanese seafood importation as a result of last week's release of treated Fukushima wastewater that had the blessings of the International Atomic Energy Agency. Japan is on track to release 1.34 million tons, equal to 540 Olympic-sized swimming pools, of treated yet still radioactive wastewater into the sea. But while China and Japan are drifting apart, the United States took the first step to thaw the rather frosty trade relations with China by sending U.S. Secretary of Commerce Gina Raimondo to reset relations and preserve the state of trade between the two superpowers in the amount of $700 billion. Still this week, here at home, kicked off on the back-to-back days of the nation honoring its freedom fighters and martyrs who offered their lives on the altar of freedom and the return of some 23 million school kids, or equal to the size of the entire Syrian population. Back to campuses and classrooms all over the nation the following day. And we hope you, like those kids, return next Friday for your weekly recap of the biggest local and international news here on PTV's Global Roundup. I'm Monique Tuzon, bidding you an eventful and fun-filled weekend ahead.